if a guy comes to you with that, what is your response to that? Like, how do you?
I'm leaving the table.
Why?
I mean, because there's so many, I think it's a classless question.
Yeah.
I think that if you get to know a person, because it's okay. So if you ask me what I'm bringing to the table, people have mouth game in Atlanta. I can tell you I'm bringing $1 million to the table and I ain't got it in my bank account. You understand? That means nothing. So why don't we get to know each other? Let's see if the vibe is right. And eventually I'm going to see if what you have to offer is compatible to me. And I will hope that you're doing the same with me. It comes with time. It's not something I can verbalize. It's just something now, if you want to know more about me, for example, when I ask a guy about, his kids. So when I go on dates, y'all, I have like a little resume. It's kind of like going on a job interview, but it's not as stiff. I have fun. So at this age, especially when I go on a date, I like to know a guy's background, for example, because I want to know if you guys do this too. So if he's ever been married before, because if he's 50 and he's never been married before, maybe he just doesn't want to get married. Like, it took you 50 years to find one woman that you wanted to be with. Are you gonna waste my time too? So that's one thing. There was this one guy I wanted to date with, and he had 4 kids, and they all had different moms. And I'm like, and you couldn't find one you wanted to marry? Not one? But you want to come to me? Like, do you guys do that? Like, when you go on do those things matter to you?
For me, I definitely like, if I meet a guy that's older, like in his 40s or 50s, and he doesn't have any children or never been married, I am thinking like, okay, well, what's wrong with you? But in the same sense, I don't like for guys to ask me, well, why don't, I'm 38, so why don't you have any children? You know what I'm saying? I hate that question, but I do it to them, but I hate when it's done to me, because nothing's wrong with me. It's just, I just haven't found.
Well, I think that my question is because men control marriage. Men control whether they ask a woman to marry them. Of course, the woman has to be on board. But that's the reason why I think like you couldn't find one person out of all the women in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I'm in the same boat as you're in, so I agree.
Anybody else? Look at that background.
I can't speak to the dating thing, but I do have a question that I do hear, especially on the manosphere. But I've also heard from single friends that they hate when this question is posed. So I want to ask you guys, what does this question mean to you, and what would be an appropriate response? Is like, Shantae was saying how it's kind of like a mini interview when you're going on a date, right? Trying to figure out, personality, trying to figure out certain things that may or may not be on your checklist, right? When a guy says to you with an approach of, so what do you bring to the table? Right?
Nobody ever says that on a date.
Okay, well, I mean, in so many words, right? In so many words. They may not directly come out and say that, but what I'm saying is, listening from like the manosphere and certain things, that's kind of what they're getting at. Like, what do you bring to the table in order for me to even want to get to a point that would show me that I want to ask you to marry me, right? So just like you do your interview, you go through your checklist. Does he not have any kids? Does he not have, what was his previous relationship about? Why did they break up? All of those things are kind of ways in which you're saying, okay, if we were to enter into a relationship, I have to find out what it is about that other person that he's bringing to the table that is going to fulfill me, right? So I guess in that question, I don't know what the verbiage will directly be at this, day and age of dating, because I'm not dating. But if a guy comes to you with that, what is your response to that? Like, how do you?
I'm leaving the table.
Why?
I mean, because there's so many, I think it's a classless question.
Yeah.
I think that if you get to know a person, because it's okay. So if you ask me what I'm bringing to the table, people have mouth game in Atlanta. I can tell you I'm bringing $1 million to the table and I ain't got it in my bank account. You understand? That means nothing. So why don't we get to know each other? Let's see if the vibe is right. And eventually I'm going to see if what you have to offer is compatible to me. And I will hope that you're doing the same with me. It comes with time. It's not something I can verbalize. It's just something now, if you want to know more about me, for example, when I ask a guy about, his kids, and I think about, because when I think about attractiveness, your situation has to be attractive. And the same with me. I have a child that may not be attractive to some men. Men may not think of that as being a situation they want to be in. And I respect that, So I think that is the craziest question on earth. It should not be in form of a question. It should just be in form of, okay, is this a person, after everything that you've told me about yourself, if I want to get to know you more, we will continue to get to know each other a little deeper, a little more, and then eventually you'll get the answer to your question. It's not something that you're going to find out in the first date, second date, third date.
Yeah, I don't answer.
Rushed.
I don't answer.
Have any of you been asked that question?
I have.
Never.
I have. And I don't answer it. And I say, like Shantae said, get to know me and you will see who I am. So, yeah, I don't answer that question. I absolutely hate that question. Hate it.
And I would never ask him. What do you bring
I would
to
never
the table? What are your pockets looking like? Oh, are you gonna? No, because I'm trying to develop a relationship with this guy, a genuine relationship, a connection. So that stuff it's just so superficial. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I know you want to say something, Lauren.
Oh no, I was gonna just say, to T-Bomb's, mentioned she was, you should be offended by that question, simply because how I hear this question, and I'm so thankful that I've never been asked this, but I know my friends have been, and I know how they felt when they were asked that, and how it can be a very dehumanizing question. It is literally someone saying to you, like, who do you think you are? Like, how could you ever formulate or fix your mouth to ever say that to anyone? Who do you think you are? Like, I'm me. What do you mean? And so for someone to ask that type of question, what do you bring to the table? If I was ever asked that when I was dating, you are effectively telling me that you lack observational skills. You're literally just walking up to me and thinking, okay, I can just start having a conversation with you. No, if you have a genuine interest in getting to know me, you're going to actually observe me in my natural habitat, however you've seen me, you know what I'm saying? And granted, I'm seeing this from a perspective of a boy meets girl and he likes her and he takes time to actually just examine her and observe her. And the vetting process starts when you notice somebody and you observe them. It doesn't start when you sit down face to face asking questions, because by this point, you've already observed enough about them to actually ask very specific questions. And the question, what do you bring to the table, is not very specific. It's actually a catch-all. I don't know anything about you, so I'm going to ask you to see if you're going to tell me the truth. And if you rely on a person's answer to say what they bring to the table, you are effectively saying that you will believe whatever they say, because you have nothing else to go off of. Mm-hmm. And if you're not taking the time to observe that person, to find out how they respond to other people, how they interact with other people, their friends, their family, even with you, with people that you may even know, if you haven't had time to look at that for that perspective, you're walking into a burning house, because that, like you said, Shantae, anyone can say anything. And what are you going to say? They're wrong, they're right. You're going to have to go with it until you see something otherwise. So just forego the question and just take the time to when you ask a very important question, listen to the answer and take that as a way to understand who you're actually talking to, who's in front of you, because representation and representatives come out all the time. And yes, we do wear these masks, they do fall off. And if you're not prepared to see who that person is after that mask fell off, because you didn't do your due diligence to observe them and to ask them very specific questions about what it is that you want, because when you have boundaries, that allows for you to ask very specific questions based upon what it is that you were trying to get out of that interaction. If you say you want to be respected, if your boundary is, I want to be respected, I want to be appreciated, I want someone to love me, I want someone to be considerate, you're going to ask questions that actually feed into these boundaries that are going to tell you what that person is about. And so you have to ask yourself, what does the boundary say if you're asking the question, what do you bring to the table? To me, that boundary would say that my boundaries are not as strong as they should be. And when I meet people, I don't really know them very well. And so I need you to tell me who you are because I have a hard time judging people's character. That's what I hear when I hear that.
I guess a little bit of pushback. I agree with what you're saying, but what's the difference between, because sometimes I get in trouble for this, where I am very direct. Some people don't necessarily or can appreciate that, where they like the fluffy, like instead of me saying, man, your breath stink, as opposed to me saying, would you like some gum? Right? I'm still getting at the same thing, but some people appreciate the presentation a little different, right? Like, yes, I'll have some gum or whatever. Whereas me, I don't want to give you the option of saying no because your breath stink, right? So I guess the same thing with the dating and asking that question. I agree. Like, I would probably feel like, what do you mean? What do I bring to the table? Because I'm going to view that as you're looking for how you want me to show up in the relationship for you, right? But the flip side, which is true, that's what compatibility is. That's what your checklist is, right? So instead of beating around the bush, I think some men or even some women, when they ask that question, may mean, I just want to cut to the chase. Tell me it, instead of saying, tell me a little bit about yourself, like you would get in an interview, right?
I mean,
Tell
but
me
is that not the classier route? What do you bring to the table?
But that's what I'm saying. I think that's the difference between me saying your breath stink, which equates to what do you bring to the table, versus would you like a piece of gum, which equates to tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I get that. So
Mhm.
so again, I think that if a man comes, so that's a category. So the man who says that, he's put in that blunt category of, in my opinion, he's classless. I mean, it's a knockdown. Like, if he comes out with that question, I'm like, he has no class about himself. What's another classless saying that people, he's like, oh, that was so classless. But I get it. It's for some people. Some people don't care.